How great is our God. How sing with me, and how great is our God. And all will see how great is our God. How great.
This is Rev. Michelle Hopkins.
I've shared information with you regarding our heliospheric program. It's an international program involving China, Russia, the U.S. Numerous countries are involved in this heliospheric program, dealing with the sun, weaponizing the sun, and experimenting with and on the sun. Now, at this point, ISON is approaching the sun. You can't see ISON. You will never be able to see ISON in this imagery. But we're going to find out what was happening with the sun and how it might have happened. First of all, what we're looking at is the corona around the sun as ISON makes its approach. 1127. Now, the first thing we want to look at is right here. There's going to open a rift in the sun. We're going to examine that rift for just a moment. Now, just before it begins to open up, we see a kind of river, if you will, moving the other activity out of the way on either side and cutting a swath right through to this rift. And just as it begins to cut through the rift, we see evidence right here of frequency. You can see infrasound, because it's extremely wide, infrasound being cut right into this rift. Infrasound coming from this direction. We know that because it bands like this. It bows like a trumpet like this. It's coming in toward the sun. And here where this river is coming at this rift, creating the rift, you see infrasound again. Just prior to the infrasound that was over here finishing up the rift, here where it starts, where it begins, you see the indications of infrasonic frequency. Infrasound, right there. And of course, out from that comes a great belching toward ISON. Now, this is 1128. ISON is in that area right now. Lo and behold, we don't get to see how that affects ISON. We don't get to see ISON because the entire area where ISON was is wiped out. It is redacted out. We come back in. There are other evidences to be found. Now, it is 1129. ISON is up in here, about ready to emerge on the other side of the sun. And as the sun comes around on 1130, we see other areas that have been cut into the sun that are now healing. Other areas cut into the sun that are now healing, and there is one gaping wound coming around that is now being allowed to heal. Look at this gaping wound, now healing, that has belched out this huge amount when it was on the other side of the sun between 1129 and 1201. It's now on the other side of the sun. but watch how it heals itself as it comes around and is left alone to heal itself. Now we learn how the sun can be used as a weapon. When we first come on the scene, the sun, through those two slits that we saw in the same area of the sun, are being used in concert to belch out a huge ring from the sun that goes the entire span of where ISON would be coming from and going toward. That's where we begin. On 11/27/2013. That is the first assault on ISON that we see from the sun. Now the next assault on ISON, we see fanning out from the sun different eruptions all around the entire sun. I mean, the activity in the sun is just unbelievable. One of them you would think would be going straight toward ISON's path where it had been. But the one that we're looking at right now is not coming toward where ISON had been because it was attracted to where ISON had been. No, it is going out to meet ISON, as we see here. This is the second assault on ISON that seems to be direct. This was the part we were never allowed to see. And by the way, this is the original stereo ahead Core 2, before it was redacted and changed. And throughout ISON'S perihelion, it is barraged over and over again with what seem to be directed radiation ejections. ISON emerges from perihelion, a little worse for the wear. Having to go through another ejection just after ISON emerges. We see this very bizarre thing come swirling out of the sun, and somehow it starts to make its way to ISON, to hit ISON as it goes by. Then we see clearly, passing through this radiation being belched out by the sun, frequency. This is frequency being emitted by a craft back in this area, and you'll notice there's an empty space. Now I can tell you without any equivocation that we absolutely do possess the technology to undulate frequency in such a manner as to not allow solid particles to pass through. It only stands to reason that if we are engaging in a heliospheric program, we would protect ourselves from massive doses of radiation coming at us at all times with this technology. Now you can tell this is an emission taking place in real time. This is not something that came up on the lens itself, and the way that you can tell that is because it goes from smaller to larger and becomes more diffuse in the radiation that it's coming toward. As ISON is leaving, this is coming against the sun, and it's going like this. It's not just these little places where we can see because the radiation is passing through it here, This is much larger than it appears. Now let's see what happens to the sun after this passes by. A great belching from the entire sun. Throughout the sun except the one place the ISON will never be again. And here is some sort of spatial body that leaves that area that this frequency was just emitted from and goes toward the general direction of ISON. This is frequency being emitted in space, and a graph placed over that. This is the first wave of frequency seen quite clearly, and then there is a lower pulsation, the second wave of frequency. That's exactly what it looked like, and this is NASA's presentation of what frequency looks like in outer space. Now I would like to draw your attention to two directed energy beams. They are heliospheric, from heliospheric satellites, and they are directed energy beams. They are not spatial bodies that are passing by. This is one of the beams. It is either laser, because at some point it's invisible, but you can tell because of the particulates that are around it and attracted to it. It is directed energy. Now, you can tell the difference between spatial bodies that are passing by and something that is maintaining its cohesion throughout. It does not change, move, grow, or disintegrate the entire time this is shown. This is a directed energy beam. This is either ion, frequency, or laser. It's as simple as that. You can see all the other bodies that are going around the sun and disintegrating, passing by. They're moving. This is stationary. Okay? It is a directed energy beam of some sort. There is another one being emitted from some satellite, from some space vehicle here. It comes up, as you can see, it is intermittent. It comes up from here toward the sun, and as it does, boom, something belches out of the sun. The corona is hit by this one. This is laser communication from a heliospheric satellite back to Earth. NASA's depiction. This is an ion beam. You'll notice in the beginning it's very powerful, very directed. As it goes out, it becomes more diffuse and even invisible. This is a laser beam fragment. You turn the laser on, turn it off very quickly. A laser beam fragment, and it travels through space for time immemorial until it hits something. And let's think about that for a moment. NASA is sending out lasers, frequency, laser fragments, and so forth into space, into deep space, without knowing what it's going to hit. What are we doing? And this is frequency. This is not actually what it would look like. You would not be able to see it unless it passed through particles. This is emitting frequency and destroying an asteroid. A satellite emitting frequency, destroying an asteroid. NASA's depiction.
This is Rev. Michelle Hopkins. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.
Sing with me, and all will see my heart will sing. How great is our God.